From the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Okay, this is going to be fun. Today is Wednesday, March 13th, 2013. My name is John Dittmer, and I am here in Tchula, Mississippi with videographer John Bishop to interview Mrs. Rosie Head, a leading civil rights activist in the Holmes County, Mississippi movement. This interview will become part of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Ms. Head, we're delighted to have you here today, and we thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you.
I'd like to begin by asking you about your family. Were you born and raised in Holmes County?
I was born in Holmes County, yes.
And tell us, what did your parents do for a living?
My dad was a carpenter and a sharecropper. And we worked in the cotton fields, corn fields, and the gardens that we call truck patches. Raised all our foods. Had cows, horses, mules, chickens, and hogs.
A real farm then?
Yes.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had 2 brothers and 7 sisters.
Oh, I see. And where are you on that chain?
I'm about the 6th.
The 6th. And you have a number of members of your family. Do you want to wait till the train goes by?
Yeah, maybe we should.
Yeah, I'm just going.
Okay, John,
Okay.
we're back.
All right. So your family, your father was a carpenter. What did he do? Build houses? Or
Build
what
houses.
Yes. And did he have a crew? Who was he working with?
Mostly he worked by himself during that time. Later on in life, he started to work with another guy that was a friend of his, Mr. Horton. We
interviewed Mr. Bruce the other day, and he was talking about the work that he was doing as a carpenter. Did your father apprentice himself to anyone, or was he just naturally talented there?
Just natural talent.
What was it like to grow up in this town?
It was, I grew up in Lexington. I was 6 years old when I left Lexington. And I moved to Greenwood. My father hired himself out to a farmer owner, a plantation owner, and to keep their houses up. And I lived in Greenwood about 10 years.
Okay, well, tell us about Greenwood. What was it? Was it a big change from Lexington?
It was. But we lived out in the country, and every once in a while we'd get to go to town, and it was exciting to go and see all the things going on in Greenwood. But mostly we worked out on the farm, picking and chopping cotton, and we did until we were old enough to go in the fields. We were babysitting the younger children, and I started working in the fields when I was 7 years old. And
you were chopping and picking when you were 7?
Chopping and picking.
Wow.
Yes, I'd rather be out with the crowd than be sitting in the house babysitting. So I proved that I could do it, and they let me go.
Oh, so it was a real family affair then.
It was.
Tell us about going to school.
I went to the first year when I was 6 years old. I didn't get to go to school. I was supposed to go to a school called Hickory Springs in Lexington, but you had to walk across a creek to get to the school, and I was too little to go, so I had to stay home. And when we moved to Greenwood, just before I turned 7, and I started school in that January, and we walked to school about 5 miles, and when I was about 10, they started giving us buses, but we still had to walk about 2-3 miles to the bus stop.
Oh, that's quite a sacrifice to make for an education.
Yes.
Most young kids today wouldn't know what to do in a situation like that.
Yeah, we walked, and we went to a school that was a church, and it was just the one room, and all the grades, pre-primer through 8th grade was in that school.
How many teachers did you have?
One teacher.
One teacher for all 8 grades.
Yes.
And what were your favorite subjects?
I always loved reading.
The church was an important part of in the community. Was it in your family as well?
It was. Yes, I remember we used to have to get up and walk to Sunday school every Sunday morning. A regular service would be one Sunday a month, but Sunday school was every Sunday. And if it was like during the summer when it was hot, the dust was like up here on your legs, and it was real hot. But we had to carry our shoes in our hands and carry a wet cloth so that when we get to the church, we could wash our legs and feet and put our socks and shoes back on.
Because you're wearing your Sunday best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about civil rights and the racial situation in Mississippi. What was segregation like? Were you aware of segregation when you were in Greenwood?
Oh, yes, very much so. My mom cooked for the plantation owner, and the younger children, there were 3 of us, there was too little at first to go to the fields, and we had to walk across with her to the plantation owner's house. And I remember we had this little girl, her name was Corey Ann, and my mom had to call her Miss Corey Ann. And I remember she could play out with us, but we couldn't come in the house, but she could play outside with us.
And you had an understanding of what was going on now, or did you have to be told that there are certain things you couldn't do?
Then we knew, because my family was the kind that talked at home to all of the children to make sure they knew what the rules for our family was and what we could and couldn't do. And so we were told our place and what we could do and what we couldn't do.
Was the plantation owner fair in terms of settlement?
Oh, no, I can remember. We would farm that land, and we could pick at least a bale of cotton a day. So
Wow.
we would pick, sometime we would work on Saturday mornings, and we would pick out 6 bales of cotton. And at the end of the year, like the day before Christmas, every farmer would be called into the office of the plantation owner, and we would have picked out, rather, we were supposed to get half of what we make on the farm. We would do from 75 to 80 bales of cotton a year. And I can remember every time my dad would come back home, they would, he had to walk up to the barn or the shop where they paid off, where they call you in and tell you if you made any money. And my dad would always come back, and when he would get back home, we always waiting up for him, and he'd sit down and take his hat off. And he always called my mom baby. And he just said, baby, we came out in the hole again. And he said that the man, you said he could just hear me every time he would go in, would say, well, Robert, I'm sorry, but you didn't clear nothing. You came out in the hole.
Did they furnish you and everything? Was there a company store? Did they
It was a
deduct
company
all-
store, and they gave us, it was 12 of us, and they gave us $35 a month to eat, and you could get that much from the store. And
So it was pretty much the same situation that had been going on for almost 100 years then. And as a kid, what was your reaction when you saw that you had been cheated, your family had been cheated?
oh, it was a hurting thing. Everybody knew that that's the time we look forward to Christmas, and we would get something, toys or something new. But they made sure you get fruit and stuff like that. You could go to the store and get that. And I remember my mom used to make dolls for us out of the sacks that you buy flour in. She would make our clothes from those flour sacks and meal sacks. And she would make dolls for us. And we would find our dolls and apple and an orange and some nuts, raisin. I can remember that so well. They were the best raisin I've ever eaten. Every Christmas, and you could smell it all over the house, because when they bring it in, they would put it in the closet so would nobody mess with it until the right time. And that's what we would look forward to.
So your folks tried to give you as normal a childhood as they could
They
under
did.
the circumstances.
They did.
But there was a lot going on then. You had, of course, the lynching and murder of Emmett Till.
Yes.
And he was about your age, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Tell us about your learning about it, and were there conversations in the family? What did this all mean?
I can remember we lived in this house that was across behind the boss, the plantation owner's house, across the levee, and we had a radio. We didn't have TV then. We had a radio, and we heard it on the radio. Well, my mom heard she was cooking, and she heard it, and she called everybody inside. And because Miney, right across from where he was at this store. Well, I went to school there. That's the school I went to, and we would walk over across the railroad to that store every day. And we had some pennies, nickels. We'd walk over there.
So you knew Milam or Bryant, Mrs. Bryant, Mrs. Milam,
Yes,
Mrs. Bryant.
she
Yes,
waited
Mrs.
on
Carolyn
us.
Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a person was she?
She just was kind of shoo us aside, when we go in the store, like she was thinking you're going to try to pick up something or something like that. She'd make sure you stay on one side and wait your turn and come and spend your penny or nickel or whatever you had.
She was afraid you'd steal from her.
Mm-hmm.
Not a nice person.
Not at all.
And did you know Emmett Till, the family that Emmett Till was staying with?
No, I didn't really know them. Because the school, that was when we had a school bus. That's when we started getting bused. I lived near Greenwood, about a mile out of Greenwood, and mine is about 8 or 10 miles. So we went on the school bus up there. I didn't know any people up there much.
I've talked with a number of civil rights workers, and they said, that Till was about their age. They realized that it could be them. Did your folks give you any special instructions after that?
Let us know, to stay in our place and do what they tell us to do. And my dad always said that God was going to take care of us if we do the right thing. And we just did what he asked us to do and what he said it was right for us to do.
So you stayed out of trouble for a while then, until you started causing something.
Yes.
So after in the late 1950s, you were what, teenager? What were you doing then?
Still chopping and picking cotton, and then my dad finally saved up enough money to buy a new car, '57 Chevrolet, brand new. But you know how you had to pay something down.
Yeah.
And the boss had gotten where he wanted the men to come and work, but he wouldn't let them come in his office to pick up the paycheck. He would ask them to send their wives to pick up the paycheck. But my dad, my mom said he's tried to talk to the black women. He liked black women, like the way. Wanted to use them rather, but my dad refused to let my mom go and pick his check up, and he went up there to get it, and he refused to give it to him, and told him he asked him for it, and he had laid his keys down on the counter and said, the man picked his keys up and he told him he wasn't getting his keys are his check. And he told him that, well, it's all right if that's what you want to do, but he won't need to be paying him a check anymore because he wouldn't be there. But he thought he had the keys, and he thought he couldn't leave, but he had a second pair of keys at home. And we left that night, we left that plantation, moved to Tchula. I had an aunt living down in Tchula, and we moved there. Got what we could in the car and moved down there, and a neighbor kept the furniture, but I understand that he scared her the next morning. She just gave up the furniture, told him she had it. So we had to start all over again then.
Did he try to get you back? Say you owe him money or anything?
He tried to get the car away from us, but it was, then they had contact everywhere. They could talk to this farmer or this person. They'd stop you from getting work there, getting any kind of money. So my dad lost that car, and that was his way of getting around, making money, doing carpenter work. And that was hard for her.
Was it a relief to be away from the plantation and in Tchula?
It was, because most of the black people around Tchula, that project had been given to people then down in Milestone, and we were able to get one of those houses.
Mm-hmm. And did you farm there?
We did.
Mm-hmm. Circumstances were better?
Much better.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And, well, then what happened? What were you're in Tchula now? How old are you?
Oh, I was 17. And I kept, there were lots of people around that you could go and chop and pick cotton by the day, and I did that for about 6-7 years. Pick cotton, chop for $1.50 a day, and pick cotton for $1.100. And I could pick about 500 a day. And
wow.
I was just.
Now, did that money go all to the family, or did you have some of it, or?
That had to go to help the family.
Yeah, so everybody was pitching in.
Yes.
So when did you go out on your own?
In 1964, 63 and 64, we started talking together with some people from Greenwood about the movement, that different people were coming into Mississippi to help people learn to register to vote. So we started going to Greenwood. Like certain nights they would have meetings, certain days they would have meetings there, and we started going there until we got a young man to come to our area, and we started having the meetings down there. We had a freedom school, and one of the churches in that area let us use the church to have our meetings and everything.
Let me just back up a little bit, and because the question I'm always asking is, what motivated you to become involved in the civil rights movement? Why? Because not very many people did early on, and especially you were probably one of the first around here, right?
Yes.
You heard about the meetings in Greenwood, and then did several of you go, or?
Yes, it had. We've been talking about it since. I've heard my dad and other people talking since Emmett Till about we're gonna have to do something, and it just kept, not doing anything, and finally it just came to the point where they found something that could help, and they would tell us all about it, and I just got interested. It was just like it was a way I knew what the people that was in charge, I knew what they thought of us and how they was treating us, and I just knew that was a better way. And just went out there hoping and praying.
So what do you remember, did you first go to a meeting in Greenwood in 62 or?
63.
Who were the SNCC people who were?
John Ball and I can't missing this fellow's name. He was a Block. Sam Block, yes. And Stokely Carmichael, Bob Moses, and Lance Guillot. There's a lot of people, different people that I'm not getting their names right now.
That's sort of Willie Peacock, I think, was
Yes,
there.
he was.
And
Hollis White.
Hollis, yes, yes.
Yes.
Hollis is still going strong too.
Yes, he is. He's a good man.
Yes, he is. So you went to the meetings, and tell me about a typical meeting. What went on in the meeting?
We would just sit around and talk about the things that was unfair to black people, like the segregated places, the schools and the different places, like the courthouse and the water fountains and things around, bathrooms, restaurants and things that we couldn't use. We talked about how we were second-class citizens, but we were having to pay taxes like first-class citizens. We talked about things that could be available to us, but we just had to get prepared to get it. And we talked about what we had to do to get registered to vote, and that's where the power was. If we could get some of the things that we needed if we were first-class citizens, and that what would make us first-class citizens.
Did you work in the voter registration campaign in Greenwood, or did you wait till it came here?
Wait until it came. No, yeah.
And did you, I believe it was John Ball, was it?
John Ball came to Holmes County.
And of course, there's the first 14. Were you aware of what was going on then?
Yes. Mr. Mitchell was very close.
Oh, really?
Mr. Mitchell and Miss Carnegie, his sister, they were all close people. We went to church together.
Miss Carnegie was real active, real early, wasn't she?
She was.
Yeah, I was reading about her.
She was
a real warrior.
Something, yes, she was.
So what about the other people who were, Hartman Turnbow is the name that comes up.
Yeah.
Tell me about Turnbow.
Mr. Turnbow, there's just one Hartman Turnbow. He was fearless. He would get up in the meeting, and when he started talking, everybody would catch on. He would talk and tell all the things that the people had been doing to black people, and he would tell them, ask them, do they want to have that going on always, or you want to do something about it? And he would get people all stirred up, and they'd be ready to go. And if a group, however many is there, if they say they're going to be there in the morning and we're going, that's what they would do. And everybody would be ready to go.
You hear lots of Turnbow stories. I heard one from Josephine Disparty. Do you remember her?
Yes.
She was the nurse, and she lived with Turnbow.
Right. Yeah.
She was saying that there was one meeting where there were all kinds of opposition to what he was doing, so at some point he gets out his pistol and lays it on the table and said, let's vote.
Yes, he did. He did. He just, whatever he believed in and whatever he stood for, he did it wholeheartedly, 100%. Wasn't scared of nobody. And he predicted all the things that we see now. He predicted all he used to come by my house and just sit and talk. After things had kind of quieted down some for years, he was getting older, and he would tell me about what to expect. He said, I'll be gone. But he told me how many prisons was going up, and all our young black boys was going to be in those prisons.
And he saw that.
He saw it, and it happened. It happened.
Ralphus Hayes?
Ralphus Hayes was a quiet, kind of well-mannered man. He had to think things out completely before he would do anything, but he was always willing to do what he could. He would try to help the rest of them to plan, see if there was something going on that he thought everybody might get locked up. He and a couple of other guys would stay back so that they could be there to help get them out of jail if they got locked up. So he was kind of a quiet person, but he was always willing to do things. A good farmer.
So his personality was sort of the opposite of Mr. Turnbull's,
Just the opposite.
and yet they were both leaders in that sense.
Yes.
What about statewide leaders? Did you go to meetings where Medgar Evers spoke?
I did. Yeah, I did.
And when you heard the news that he had been assassinated,
Oh boy.
what was going through?
It was like a family member had been killed, because we'd been used to hearing way off where they would lynch people and they would burn their houses down, take over families. This guy told me, I was working in the cotton fields picking cotton. He told me about how this white farmer had, every time he was be in the house with his family, if it's winter time, they're not doing anything then. He said that that was the worst thing I'd ever heard, but he said that this farmer would come in his house and he would have to leave home and let him stay there and have his way with his wife, and he couldn't come back until he saved the time for him to come back. And
It's like days of slavery. But there was now a movement going on to do something about it. Aaron Henry, was he?
yes.
Someone, was he around much?
Yeah, he came several times. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Council of Federated Organizations, and we'll move up. I want to get into politics because you were very active there. But there was, for example, the Freedom Vote in the fall of '63, where Aaron Henry and Ed King were running, and you had a big campaign for a mock election to prove to the world that Mississippi blacks would vote if given the chance. Were you active in that campaign?
Yes, I was.
Tell us about what you did.
I went around canvassing the community to get people, make sure people understood what the mock election was about and how important it was to get out, come out and vote, and help out in the schools that train people what to do and how to do if they come out and there was any kind of confrontation with the white folk. We would know, they would know what to do and not to get in any trouble. And we went all over Holmes County, all out in the hills, Lexington part and Durant, everywhere. And we, to get people to come out and register and try to vote.
Were some of them afraid, even with the mock election, to take the ballot?
Some of them were afraid because they were living in this plantation owners' houses, and they were thinking they wouldn't have a place to live. And some people got put off the plantations, and we had to find places for them to live. And then there were people from the north that were sending food and clothing and money down, and we would help them out that way. But I remember several houses we had gone to, and we were then talking about Head Start, trying to get Head Start, and we had to go to each house whether they accept us or not. And we would go to the white farmers' houses, and then they would always make you got to go to the back door. So they would either come out and curse you out or say no, their children couldn't go, but they just say, "You nigger, get off my property," and curse you out, and that was it. But
so you were canvassing all the houses to talk about Head Start. In other words, it was supposed to be an integrated program. Open
you
to
had
everybody.
to do that to be able to get federal money. But for the election, we just had to make sure we got everybody out and find out who needed a ride to come to vote in the mock election.
Where were the polling places for the mock election?
In Thorn and in Mileston. They were like all over the county.
Were they in barbershops, beauty parlors?
And anybody place that had a place that you could use.
And so the vote sent a message, but still at this time, despite years of organizing why the white supremacists still had the upper hand. And the federal government wasn't really that interested in what was going on, or didn't seem to be interested. And the Ku Klux Klan had revived. Was there any Klan activity in Holmes County?
Oh yes, I can remember there were about 6 of us at we called it the Holmes County Community Center that our friend came down from California and built for us. And we would all be there working late at night trying to get out newsletters and get things ready to put in the mail the next day. And several nights we would be there was a little sleeping quarters upstairs there, and we would be just getting settled down, and we'd hear the trucks out there turning around and around in the yard in front of the building. And then they would shoot up in the air, and when we hear that, it would scare us half to death, and we'd go and try to call some of the men to come. And they would just continually, be shouting all kind of language out at us and telling us to get out of there and what they were going to do to us. And by the time they see, we was like the center set across the railroad track, and they could see every car that turned off. By the time they see somebody coming that way, they would set the cross out there and get back in the truck, and then light the cross and shoot up in there and leave. Yeah,
It's all intimidation. So you really were living with fear for your lives.
All the time, even when I would go home, the adults would take turns sitting up watching to make sure, because they were famous for throwing those, what they call them, cocktail bombs. Yeah, they would throw them in people's houses.
How did you overcome your fear?
Just praying and knowing that there was nothing else to do. You couldn't go back.
Yeah. Well, because things seem to be still in the hands of the white power structure without any assistance from outside, there was a decision made to have a summer project in 1964, bringing hundreds of students down from the north, most of whom turned out to be white, to really shine the spotlight on Mississippi and to get the nation outraged about what was going on. And they'll be working in freedom schools, voter registration for the new Freedom Democratic Party, which we'll be talking about, and also in community centers. There were, I read, where there were about 30 Freedom Summer volunteers in Holmes County.
Yes.
Tell us about what Freedom Summer was like here and your role in it.
Oh, boy. It was like I spent most of my almost 24 hours a day in that building with those people doing whatever there was to do. We would just be planning the way who was going where and what we had to do to get people to come out and learn how to go and try to register. And we would all get together and get in cars, whatever car we could find, and go around canvassing the community. That was the most we did. We would canvass to get people out, and we would have meetings in different communities to talk to people so that they would understand and wouldn't be scared to come out. And we let them know that we all would be in it together. Whatever happened, we was going to help them out. If they didn't have a place to stay, that we was going to be able to help them one way or the other. So
the volunteers were staying with local people then?
Local people, yes.
How did whites react to this invasion, as they call it?
Sometimes we would go downtown or any public place, and they would just stand around just like, and they would be talking and screaming out niggers at you and everything and calling them nigger lovers. I'll never forget, we walked from Valley State, from over Itabena to Jackson, and there were people, when we left Tchula, that railroad to go down State Street, there were people on those railroads up on those boxcars, and they was throwing big rocks down at us, but they would just do it enough for it not to hit you, but you wouldn't know whether it was going to hit you or not. They had guns, they had everything, and they was calling us some of everything, and the policemen and highway patrolmen were right there, but they didn't say a word.
Was this
They
during
just-
the Meredith March? Or?
It was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They
Were there any extreme racial incidents in Holmes County during Freedom Summer that you remember? People
yes,
being arrested
yes,
or beaten?
that was Sam House. He got arrested several times. They had this black guy in Lexington. We called him Fats. He would, if they just walked down the street, he would pick him up and put him in jail. And there was a lot of time that we were marching, and they would come out upset about it. We would be marching because we were boycotting some stores out there. And there was a time when there was this lady that they had taken her by each one of her legs and just pulled her down and exposed her whole body to everybody.
Oh.
It's,
One of the things that was going on that summer, Holmes County was unique in many ways in terms of the civil rights movement. But a guy from California named Abe Osteroff came down to build a community center. Tell us about what that was like from your end, seeing these strange folks up there going to work.
It was, we couldn't believe it that someone would come and give us a whole new building like that. My dad helped to build that center, and Abe was a good man, real kind-hearted, kind of big. He looked big and furious looking, but he was real kind-hearted, man. We got to be real good friends. And seeing that building go up, people would come from all over the county and just stand around and watch things being done. And when they got finished with the building, they couldn't get the gas companies to put gas in it, couldn't get a telephone. And we had to have wood heaters we put up in the building.
I've seen pictures of that stove in the middle.
And they did some of everything to scare us out of there. There was right from the highway over there, you probably came up through Milestone. You had to come across that railroad to get over there, and they would keep one or two highway patrolmen sitting there, stopping everybody to come through so that they let people know not to try coming through because you was going to get a ticket or get your license taken away from you. So it was...
Sort of the same way people going to Tchula College sometimes getting stopped saying, don't go there.
Yeah.
That fall, a couple of new people came to town, Henry and Sue Lorenzi. And
yes.
they lived in the center for a little while. Talk about Sue and Henry, and then I'm going to talk about your work at the center.
Sue and Henry, well, when they came in, they wasn't for sure where they was going to stay at, but when they got there and got to know some of the people there and realized what we had and what we needed there, they decided to stay. And everybody kind of took a liking to Sue and Henry. Everybody would all come out to the center every day just to talk to Henry and Sue. And Henry was the one that looked like he had all the knowledge. He had an answer to everything you came up with. And he had asked me about working in the center, managing the community center when they was getting ready to leave, and I was telling them I didn't have no skills for that. I didn't know how to do anything like that. And he was telling me all the things I had that I didn't know of. He went down the line telling me about what I had did for him since he had been there. And he was telling me that he always told me I need to write a book. But I never did. But Henry was a good man. He would always try to help the underdog. He just, whoever he thought needed it the most, he would let it be known that these are the people you need to be looking to do things for and try to encourage them. But Henry and Sue did a lot to organize our community and all over the county. They finally eventually moved over in Lexington, but they were always coming back over and doing things to to keep people together.
And he asked you to run the center, and you did.
He did.
Now, I want you to spend a little bit of time talking about your work there, because lots of people read about community centers, but they don't have the foggiest idea what their purpose was. So tell us about the Milestone Center and what services it provided and what kind of work you were doing.
The main purpose of it, the center, was to have a place for people to meet there, to come together and talk about their problems or what the problems were in the county or what we could do to make it better. And it was like, what I did was to keep all the records of everything that went on in our area, in the county. And I was like to take all the messages coming in from wherever, even out of the state and everywhere, and send newsletters out. And that was about 4 other young women working with me. And we would, I was just in charge of making sure that everything, there was a record kept of everything, and that everything was in the center that needed to be there. Everything that we needed to keep the building running was there. I would call people and inform them about meetings or whatever was going on across the county. I would get out newsletters to them, also send notices to people to let them know things that were going on in the county.
Tell us about the health clinic.
Oh, that was, like you spoke of Josephine Disparty, and there was another lady. Her name was Helen, I believe.
Helen Richardson?
Mm-hmm. And Helene, there was another young lady. And they came first just in the center. They would help out. They gave people physical exams and everything, and whatever medical services they could render, they did it. And we found a way to get a little room built for the clinic. And they started letting people come from all over the county, just like a regular doctor's office. And they stayed there, at least I know, all that summer. And they would come back once in a while, but they offered medical services to
And there was
county.
the Medical Committee for Human Rights was the organization running it, and a young doctor named Alvin Poussaint would come up. Did you know Poussaint?
I knew him well. In fact, he used to stay in touch with me a lot. He did. Yes.
But I think people movement, comprehensive community health centers, which provide health care to over 30 million Americans now, that all started in that little clinic in Milestone.
Yes, it did.
From there, they got the idea to expand and opened health centers. There are health centers here now, aren't there?
Yes.
How do they operate?
There's several Mallory clinics. There was for the school out there that was named for this Dr. Arena C. Mallory, and they have those clinics in a lot of towns. And they offer services to people that can't afford regular doctors. They free service to some people, and some people you pay as you're able to.
So has healthcare improved around here from the time that you were, when you were your family were sick on the plantation? What did you do?
Take home remedies.
Did you ever see a doctor, or?
I had never seen a doctor until I had my first child.
Or been in a hospital? Or?
Never.
And the rest of your family, did they?
Never.
Because they'd have to pay.
And my mom had all of us at home.
And there were no black doctors in the county?
No.
So there have been some changes there.
Yeah.
You're far too modest about your work in the center. I have something here that says you handle day-to-day center programs for kids, a kindergarten.
Oh yeah, I'm forgetting about Head Start. Yeah, we did. The 2 years before we got federal money. We had decided that we wanted to open a school for kindergarten children. We didn't have a kindergarten at the time, and they were kindergarten age children. So we, with the help of Sue and Henry, we set up a makeshift school for the children to come, and we went around and canvassed to see what children we could get to come. And we had, Abe also gave us a truck when he built the center, and we finally learned how to drive it well enough that we would go around and pick up all the children and bring them to school and keep them there until 3:30 in the evening. We would feed them. In the morning time, we would have stuff like grits, oatmeal, milk and cookies, or whatever we could get, and the different farmers would give us things, different items to help out, and they would give us money for gas, or either they would give us gas, put gas in the truck from their farming gas, and we would go around and pick the children up, and we would bring them back, and we would do all kind of things. We made clothes for them. We had sewing machines, and my sister and me knew how to sew a little bit, so we made clothing for all the children. And we would go through all kind of activities. We had farmers to come out and build playground equipment, and we just did everything that you would do in a school with the help of Sue and
Now,
Henry.
this was before Head Start?
That was before Head
Well,
Start.
you
We
were
didn't
doing
have any
everything
money.
that you were doing
Everything
later on.
basically, and sometimes I think it was better then,
Yeah.
because you could kind of do what you wanted, didn't have all these rules.
Didn't have any forms to fill out.
And it was a good program. People, everybody, the children now, sometimes they'll come by, and one little boy, I'll never forget him. We all call him Shorty. He said the first day he came to school, said he cried so hard not to come, and we came and picked him up anyway, and he went back home and he told his grandma, said, "Grandmama, that's the best school in the world, because they will feed you 3 meals every day you go to school, and then they'll let you lay down and go to sleep and still bring you back home." And he told me he'll never forget that. That'll go with him the rest of his life. He said every time he goes somewhere and they start talking, and some people talk about their first teachers, so he'll go back and call my name and think about all the times that when he was scared and nervous, I would let him lay on my lap and rock him in the rocking chair. He said, I was at home. I had 2 grandmothers. Yeah, but that was a good program.
I want to talk about your work in Head Start a little later, but now I'd like to switch to another major area of your concern and activity, and that is voting and elections. And what you have is a county that is majority black with very few blacks voting. And this we talked about trying to register in April of '63. And then in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, and federal registrars came in. And how did you take advantage of this?
Before the federal register came, we had tried to go out and register, and we were blocked from that. Well, in fact, we were taking a lot of people out all the time, and when I first went out, there were 5 of us women, and it was like when we went up to the courthouse, and the sheriff knew that we were there, all his deputies came out with the dogs and the billy clubs and the guns and everything, and I was real nervous because I'm afraid of dogs. And they would walk right along beside you and let the dog be between them and you, and then when they'll go, they'd pull them back just a little bit, but they'd come back again. I never will forget when I finally went in, they put me in a little room like a closet with a little desk in it, and they closed the door. And I had been in there about an hour, and I had been finished when I was filling out the paper. So I tried to open the door, and when I touched the doorknob, I heard the dog growl, and I said, "Oh my God!" And every time I would touch the door, he would growl. So they had left him there guarding the door, and it was about 4 hours later when they came and let me out. And I was scared to death.
So you were held as a prisoner
Because
while you
I
were
was
trying
thinking
to-
if I
Oh.
come out, he's definitely going to attack me.
Yeah,
you
you
know,
see,
and
that's a story I've never heard before. I've heard of all kinds of intimidation,
Well,
but
that's
never,
what they
never
did.
anything like that.
And the chancellor clerk had said to me, now I know you know better. He knew my grandparent. I've known your people years and years, and I know you know better. What are you doing out here anyway? And so I told him what I wanted. And he said, you go home and do like your mama and your grandmama did. You don't need to come out here. This ain't for black folk. And that's the way they did. All of us that went, the four ladies that went with me, and we were able to, had to go back a second day for some of us, and we all went together because we knew how it was. But they never told us that we had passed the test until the federal registers came, and they found the records and everything, and it was like the next year. And they finally told us that we had passed the same first time we had gone out there.
But they did, you passed it, but they didn't tell you.
Didn't tell you. They were supposed to send you a letter or notify you that, but they didn't tell us.
So it really took real courage before the Voting Rights Act to
Oh,
go in
yes.
to try to register.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Voting Rights Act is passed, and the federal registrars come in, and it's a lot easier, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is.
And now, how did you get folks who had been afraid to vote to register before saying it's okay now? What did you do to get them to the registrar?
They started to, after they saw so many people, and then the main thing was when they started to see that there were housing available for them if they get put off the plantation. They was afraid of not having a place for to live. And once they saw other people going, sometimes we would just get truckloads of people all in the back of the truck and take them out there. You had to take them, though. Most people wouldn't just go on their own. You had to, somebody had to be with them to think that, they had protection. And it took a lot of talking. A lot of people said they were going and didn't for a long time until all it got a little better, and they knew that everybody was doing it, and they finally started coming out.
One of the things that it was notable, I think, throughout the state, well, throughout the South, is that at the beginning, the early stages of the civil rights movement, the black professionals, the teachers and preachers were not around very much, were they?
Sure was.
Why was that?
They, I think most of them thought that they stood in good with the white folk, and they didn't want them to think they were in that because they were telling them that there were some crazy white folks coming in here, some outside agitators and people, educated people, and people like them weren't supposed to be. But I think they was mostly scared, and it was good they had that hide behind some of the teachers thinking they would lose their job. Because Bernice Montgomery, from the beginning, she came down with us, and she would come to Milestone for our meetings. Everybody else. She was a teacher.
It sort of stood out as a result.
Yes, and she came right away. But it took a lot of talking and coaxing, and have the meetings and everything. They would come to the meetings. Some of them would come, and because it was night and they thought would nobody know they were there, and they would come, and then finally when they saw everybody else voting, they decided to come on out.
So you got a lot of people registered, and then it was time to start planning for elections. I was reading in Sue's book that you were very active in the 1966 election for congressional races, with Mr. Hayes running here.
Yes.
What did you do to mobilize people for that election?
We had we had a lot of people that had cars to agree to, we give gas to them for their travel, and they agreed to pick up people that needed. We had people posted at the center. They could take calls when there were some people needing to be picked up, and cars all over the county were picking people up and getting them to the polls and waiting and taking them back home and everything. But we had to let them know ahead of time, that we had transportation available to them, and we had to have somebody for each area to find out how many people there needed to go and how many were willing to go. Because most of them were afraid, so you had to go and get them. They wouldn't just come. Some people may have had cars, but they didn't. They were afraid to come on their own. So we had to make sure that they knew that we were with them and we were coming to pick them up.
And I should be pointed out that this was all under the auspices of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
It was.
It was not, you were not part of the regular Democratic Party.
Right.
Talk about your early work with the Freedom Democrats.
Well, we had different people in the county, in different parts of the county, that were in charge of their area, and the people in the communities that knew who to get in touch with. They would, like, if they called in, they would you could tell them who they could get in touch with and who was be able to that day, beforehand. We had all kind of meetings all across the county telling them what we was going to do and where we were going to be at and who was going to do what. So we had to get organized for that, just like the real Democratic Party. We had people all over the county in place for people to get information from, to know what to do and everything, and take them there and take them to the polling places and let them know that these people, someone would even be afraid to go and say what they wanted to do, but you had to go and just talk for them. So for some of them, you had to speak for them. But
in those early elections, was there intimidation at the polls?
Oh yes, I had an instance where this guy wanted to. His wife had never worked at the polls, and I was the manager, and the receiving and the returning manager, and the chancery clerk, then the circuit clerk, that's who it was, Kevin Moore. He had agreed to let this woman work in the position that I had had before, and then he called me at home one night to tell me that he expected me to do what I had been doing all the time because she was new and she wouldn't know. And I asked him who was going to be carrying that title and be responsible for the election. And he said she was, and I said, well, all right, that's what she'll be doing. So I won't be doing it, she'll be doing it. So he came down there that day, and because she told him that she couldn't do it, she didn't understand that she couldn't do it, she'd rather not. I was put back in that position of being receiving and returning manager. And that evening, her husband was a truck driver. He had his big log truck. That evening, he came, and somebody told him that his wife wasn't working in that position. So he came out there. He had been drinking, and he was cursing everybody out. He's gonna take her and take her home, and she wouldn't ever come back down there again. So he had his gun and everything, but some of our people came in and got him out of there, and cause it was a little kind of scary at first because he was the only one with a gun in there, and he was crazy because he was drunk. And he came and took her out of there, and she couldn't help us to close the election.
Oh.
And I remember back then we had old buildings we had to vote in, and it was sometimes the heat wasn't no good. It would be so cold in there, and we have stayed there from then. We went in at 6:30 till 3 and 4 o'clock the next morning. We had to count and do the tallies, and that was rough. But we had to stick it out. There was several of us, and other people would come in just to be there for support. they could stand around, they just couldn't interfere with the election. So some of our friends or men in the community would come out because it would be some of them there and some of us, and it was rough.
I remember, well, from my own experience and from others, that on election day, why, very often, really rough-looking white people would park themselves right in front of the door. Wouldn't say anything, they'd just sit there. And I was doing some poll watching in Canton, and cars with black families, black voters would come, and they'd see these guys, and they'd turn off and go away. There are all sorts of intimidation.
That's what they would do, and they would, when time came for you to do the tallying, they would come and stand right. You know, they're able to observe, looking over your shoulder and everything. So they would come, and they wouldn't say anything, but they would just come, you know, acting like who they would, you know.
When you had voters who had trouble reading, how did you handle that? Were you able to go into the polling booth with them, or
yes.
how were they able to cast their vote the way they wanted to?
We had to make sure they knew that there were people there that they could ask for help, that we couldn't just come and help them, but there were people there that I could ask for help. Because it got so that so many people would ask me to help them that the other side started saying that not wanting me to work at the polls. They was thinking I was doing something because how would everybody know to ask me? But see, that was just the communication we had before the election. But
You had to really be set up so people wouldn't turn around and go away.
Because they would say, I can't do this, I don't understand it. And some wouldn't come out if they didn't know they could, because that's what they would come in. I remember, we forget, a lady came, and when she came in the door, she had asked for me. And they want to know what she wanted with me and why she was asking for the poll official. Was there trouble? And she said, I was told that she could help me. I don't know how to vote, but she can help me. And so this white guy, his name was Bobby Love, he told her she couldn't vote that day, or she didn't know how she couldn't vote. And so one of the poll watchers happened to hear, and so he brought her over there and told her. But he got real upset. And the lady, his wife worked at the welfare office, and this lady was getting food stamps and welfare check. They cut her services off, her benefits, until she could get it straightened out.
The 1966 elections were sort of a warm-up for the 67 elections in Mississippi, the off-year elections where all the local officials and state legislators are elected. And this was a very big time in Holmes County. Robert Clark was running for the state legislature. Tell us about Mr. Clark and why he was he a good candidate, and if so, why?
He was. One thing, he was well known all over the county, and he had been a school teacher before that, and he had gone around and did all of his campaigning and everything, and everybody knew him, and it was kind of where everybody knew what they was going to do when they went out there. They tried everything to scare people back. They had people out there working for them, the white folks did, saying, telling the people what's going to happen if they went out and tried to vote for Representative Clark. And there was a lot of people who would come back and report what they had said to them. So by us having somebody stationed at every place, outside and inside, we had people out there that would be there to assist anybody that had trouble. They would make sure, because if a person coming up to vote, they wouldn't know who was who. Whether they even had some black people out there working for them. So we had to try to make sure that they knew that we were there and able to help them. So it had gotten by then so that people knew what they was going to do before they left home. And that's how we were successful in this area all the time, because people would always, if they knew that an election was coming up, they would call either me or somebody else to find out what candidate are we supporting, or what are we doing now, when is the day, and where do we go. They would call and get all that information, and then we would tell that person, tell your neighbor, and tell your sister, or your brother, or whoever, and so they can know what to do when they get there. So that was some of the ways that we always were able to do the word of mouth thing. We couldn't count on getting to everybody, but we knew we would always know somebody that knew the next person, and they would make sure they knew what to do.
Lawrence Guillot, in his preface to Tchula Sojourner's book, was talking about Holmes County as being the best organized county in the state. And there were a number of other counties with black majorities, but in that election in 1967, the election of Robert Clark was the only successful legislative race, and Clark became the first African American to sit in the state legislature in the 20th century. Was there a big party after that election?
Oh yes, all over the county, state, and everywhere. Yes, it was. People were really proud. It made Representative Clark was whatever was going on in the county. If Representative Clark approved it, we knew that's what we needed to do.
We're going to, I would like then to look now at your professional career in Head Start. Talk about CDGM and how you got involved and how that operated.
With CDGM, Sue and Henry brought this to us also. The state had got funded for a 6-week program, and we had to get the people that we wanted to work and get a committee and everything to set up for the centers. And Mason was the only center in that 6-week program, and we went down to Mount Beulah, places. It was Mississippi for a week, and we stayed there and got trained on what the government expected of us with that program. And it turned out just great. Everything worked out well. It was getting. We thought we had it for just as long as we needed it. It was really a good program, and I remember Polly Greenberg and
Tom Levin?
Tom Levin,
Yeah.
yes, and I was along with the chairperson for our center. I was the secretary, and I was also an assistant teacher. So we had to drive to Jackson like every Friday. Like this Friday, we carried the payroll and all the information to get what we needed for the center, the operation of the center. We'll take the paperwork down there. The next week we'll go and pick the checks up. And we had an account in the bank in Tchula. And in the beginning, the bank refused to cash our checks. They said they didn't know what it was. They had never heard of it. And the only way we got checks cashed, there was a supermarket in Tchula that they would cash our checks, but they wouldn't even cash the checks.
The banks come around.
And they came around as a guy that had a supermarket, Bluford Taylor. He finally talked them into it. And I remember there was another guy's name was D.C. Cohen. They was talking about how was the fund going to come to us, and they wanted us to get a committee, let them be over the funding part of the program. And we refused that night to do that, and Representative Clark probably going to tell you all about it, so I let him do it when we had that meeting that night. And he thought I was from outside of Mississippi. I was asking some questions, and he thought, but he'll tell you that he loved to do that himself. But anyway, there's a guy that has a store over in Lexington, a dry goods store. His name is Cohen. I remember him and Hazel Brandon Smith. They had been in the meeting with us, and they couldn't get us to do what they wanted us to do. And they were talking. We were walking down the stairs. I was kind of right behind them, and they said, these niggas gonna suffer because they don't know what they're doing. They can't handle no money like that. And I remember Mr. Cohen saying, and it hurt my feelings, but it was true. He said, Hazel, leave them niggas alone. Say, my motto is, give them anything they ask you for, because they're going to bring it back and give it back to you the next day. I said, well. She said, well, they're going to suffer for it, because they could have had this money and they won't get it. And I told her, she was kind of, she had been to our center, she would talk to us, and she would print everything with me. So Hazel Brown Smith. So I told her, I said, Miss Smith, I said, one thing about it, we're used to suffering, and I know some people that's not used to it, so that's who it's gonna hurt. And she didn't say anything else. We kept walking, but anyway, it was rough that first year. They wouldn't every time that money would come in, the government would veto it. And then they would have to override them to get the money, so that's more time left. And I remember at the end of those 6 weeks, they didn't tell us anything. When I knew anything, we knew anything at the center where I worked. They were coming in to get all the furniture and everything out that they given us, the chairs and tables and everything. And they said it was something misspent, something, I don't know what it was, but anyway, we started working right away on trying to get refunded.
Okay, let me just stop right here because of that. But we should know that CDGM was voted as the best Head Start program in the country that summer. And tell us what it was like to be working in that center. What about the kids, about the program for the day? It
was wonderful that we had the funding money was enough so that everything you needed to operate was covered. They had food like you would get at a restaurant. They had steaks, pork chops, sausages, and eggs and everything for breakfast and lunch and everything. If someone came there at 3 o'clock, there was still some food that you could serve them. Sometimes the people from Jackson would come, and they would come and eat. But we had everything. We had been using equipment and stuff that the farmers, the different carpenters built for us. But we got everything we needed, and the children, it was so beautiful. The children were just.
What about the teaching? What were you trying to teach them?
We trying to teach them, just like regular, how to. Well, first we had to get them used to coming out and being away from home and from familiar people, you know. And they would. I remember the first group we had a shower in the center, and some of the children would come just like they pick them up out of the bed and send them there, and we'd make clothes for them, so we would have to get in the shower with them. We'd have to wear something that we could get in the shower with the children and bathe them in the shower. They'd never seen a shower. Some of them had never seen commodes in the bathroom before. They had outside toilets. And it was, we would teach the children, we started off, we would teach them, we did this even before we had money, we would teach them by letting them tell us things about that they knew, and we would write it down, and then the next day we would read it back to them, and it would be like, I think Polly Greenberg had a book, she wrote about some things that we did like that, but we taught them how to use the toilet, how to bathe themselves, we taught them how to just share with other children, just everything. We taught them how to speak, and they after they had been there for about that first 2 weeks, it was like they didn't want to go home in the evening time. They were just so proud of being there. And when we had the first little graduation, we were so proud that what they had learned. And some of the teachers came from the school, and they couldn't believe that those children had learned, and
ABCs
most of them,
and
how to write their names. They could print their names, and they could recognize every child in the class, recognize their names. Like we had cots for the children with their names on. We had chairs, and we would practice with them, going and getting everybody's chairs. Every name you called, they could go and find that chair, and they could find the colors of all the chairs with different colors. and the tables, some of them were different colors. So that's how we taught with what we had, whatever we had. We would go outside and let the children find things outside. They would count the cars, they would count buildings, they would count the trees, the flowers, and everything. And that taught them so much. And it was just that some of the parents didn't know some of those things to teach their children. That's why they didn't know. And I learned a lot that year myself. That's how children learn. They learn whatever their environment is, and it was, you could just see how the children was progressing, and it was so hurtful when they said the money was gone, we couldn't get funded, and we started working on
Let me
it.
just ask about that. The CDGM, although it was the best program in the country, was not refunded because Senator John Stennis and others believed that it was a civil rights organization.
That's
and
what they
didn't
said.
like money coming into the state they couldn't
They
control.
couldn't control.
So what happened here when you found that no longer, that there was temporary funding for a while and then they cut it off completely? How did Head Start evolve through all this in Holmes County, in Mileston?
We started working all over again, just like the movement. We started working, getting people together and trying. We even got a bus, my second daughter, and 3 other children, and one of our teachers, her name is Zelma. She lives in Cleveland now, but they went to Washington to lobby for funds for Head Start, and we all got together and rented a Greyhound bus for the state, and everybody sent however many children they wanted to, and they went to.
Did you go on that trip?
I didn't. I was always stuck in the center keeping it.
Oh, yeah. I heard that was a wonderful experience.
Yes, it was.
They just turned those kids loose on a congressman.
Yes, that's what we did. And then after that, we worked for 3 months without funds again. We brought the food out. We worked just like when we kept the program going just like when we had funds. And we worked until May of that next year, I believe, and finally got funded again.
Tell us about, well, we've kept you long enough, but I want you to talk some about what you've been doing in the years since the movement years.
Oh, well, I've gone to college and
Where did you go to college?
Tchula.
Tchula?
Yeah. And it was such a long time ago. I had gone and got a 2-year degree first. And I'm thinking, before we only had to have a high school certificate to work with Head Start. But every time they changed, we had to keep going. And finally, I got a CDA credential. And then a couple of years ago, they said we had to go back to school. So I had been going that time, but I had 8 children that had to go to school first, so I had to let them go, and when they got finished, I started back. So, and then my health started kind of failing me. I'm a diabetic, a type 2 diabetic, so it was a little much for me, and I stopped. But then I only needed about 3 hours to graduate, but I just kept putting it off, and finally I went back down there and I met Dr. McLean, and he told me, now it was in 78 when I got my 2-year degree, and he was saying he wasn't sure if the college would accept everything I had, but they had a way that they could help me to brush up on some of them. And that's what we're doing now.
Oh.
But I've been working at Head Start 47 years now.
Wow.
And I'm still
That is
there.
amazing.
I'm still there now.
Ms. Head, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. This was inspirational,
Yes.
and I know the people who read the transcript and watch this at the African American History Museum will be as excited as we are here to have you tell the story.
Well, I hope I did it right.
You nailed it.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture.